Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I've met a number of you already, know some of you, and it's always good to talk to this group. And I appreciate all of you who've come out on a beautiful Saturday afternoon to discuss this. And to reward you, I'd like to start about and repeat exactly what I did this morning, a rather dull and uneventful day. This morning, I woke up, turned on the light, and because it is a fluorescent bulb that takes 30 seconds to warm up, I didn't see my daughter's choo-choo train on the floor, stepped on it, and tripped. I then went to the bathroom, and it took me 3 or 4 times of flushing the toilet to make sure everything went down properly, so to speak. This is because in the mid-90s, the federal government told me that I had to have a toilet that only used 1.8 gallons of water, as opposed to the 5 gallons that is used in my parents' home, a much more efficient and easier to clean toilet as a result. I then took a shower and realized that it's just not as refreshing as it used to be because the federal government requires that we use low-flow shower heads to save water. But it means I have to spend more time in the shower trying to get the soap off. It's just not as fun and enjoyable and relaxing as it used to be. A good way to start the day. The night before, I had done a load of laundry and put it in the dryer, so I walked to the dryer to get some clean clothes. And of course, I had to check because the new washers and dryers that are mandated by the federal government under the energy efficiency standards don't clean as well as my old 20-year-old washer and dryer that I replaced recently. And even worse, my hot water heater, by federal edict, can't be set more than 130 degrees. So you need hot water to clean things, it turns out, and therefore my shower, my dishwasher, and my washing machine don't work as well simply because we have to use colder water. I then proceeded to get some coffee, and when I put the sugar in, I realized that the sugar costs 4 or 5 times more than anywhere else in the world because of the tariffs imposed by the federal government to protect sugar growers down in South Florida. And because of that, these are the same sugar growers that are lambasted routinely by the liberal left for causing pollution and destroying the Everglades. And as I looked in my pantry to get something to eat, I noticed that all the foods in there tended to use something called fructose instead of regular sugar or sucrose. Fructose is a corn syrup. It's sweet, but it's not as good as sugar. And it's been implicated in all kinds of health risks for obesity and heart disease and diabetes and childhood obesity. But it's used partly because it's easier to manufacture. It's a liquid, it pours easier. But also because it's 4 or 5 times cheaper than regular sugar. And when you're only getting 1 or 2% profit on food products, every penny counts. I put my kids and my wife in the car so they could go visit Grandma and Grandpa. And it occurred to me that my car costs several $1,000s more because of mandated fuel and safety standards that aren't terribly effective, and that my car is actually less safe and more expensive because in order to reach those mandated fuel standards that the president just wrote with a pen, all cars will have a certain level of efficiency, they had to take mass and material out of the design of the vehicles to make them lighter. And lighter vehicles just don't do as well in car accidents as heavier vehicles for obvious reasons. So my car is more expensive and less safe than it could be if it was just manufactured by someone who was trying to make the best vehicle available. And then I walk back inside and remember that, I forgot to take my medicine. Like most people in their 40s, I take medicine for cholesterol. And in my family, that's important because we have a history of bad cholesterol, genetic disposition to it. And so I took my cholesterol medication. It's the newest one on the market. It's very effective. The results from my tests are phenomenal, miraculous. But this drug is just over 1.5 years old. It took about 10 years to be approved by the FDA. The FDA will say that it saves thousands of lives per year, but I think of my uncle who passed away about 10 years ago from a heart attack. He was 61, very healthy, way fitter than I am. Jogged, exercised, watched what he ate, liked salads, not a big red meat guy, died of a heart attack. That medicine could have been available had it not been tied up in an FDA trial for over 10 years. And of course, the medicine is more expensive because it costs about $800 million a year for that medicine to be tested by the FDA. $800 million. The manufacturing costs of those pills are probably something on the order of about 5 to 10 cents a piece. It's all the testing and research and development that drives the cost up. And even worse, you have to get your patents filed before FDA testing. So when it's approved and you can sell it, half of your patent protection is gone. You only have 10 years to make a profit before all the other companies start making their generic versions. So as a result, we have fewer drugs, less drugs, more expensive drugs. There are fewer drug companies doing research. Some diseases don't even get research because it's not profitable to spend $1 billion developing a new drug that may only treat 500 or 600 people in the entire world. And that's a shame because this pill is wonderful, but all I can think of is how much more we could do. And when I look at all these things, they're all caused by things that government does. And here's the important thing I want you to start with. Most of us in this room are conservative. We really do not like liberal politics. We're opposed to socialism, and that's wonderful and proper. But all these policies, many of them have survived under conservative and liberal regimes in our nation, and throughout the world for that matter. The important thing is that this is government regulation, government intrusion, and it doesn't matter if you're conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, Tea Party, radical, communist, socialist. The point is, these things happen in all governments under all regimes. And here's the other thing I want you all to think of. I've been in politics before. I've worked on Capitol Hill. I've run for public office. I'm an attorney. I deal with politicians on a regular basis. Attorneys and politicians have to like each other because no one else does. So the important thing is, I've met a few politicians who are the worst of the lot. They are corrupt. They are power mad. They have duplicitous agendas. I'm not going to name any names. That's counterproductive. Most of them, though, think they're on the side of angels. Most of them put policies like I just alluded to in place because they thought they were solving a problem. They felt the government had to do something. They thought they were doing the right thing. And in all the things I've listed, the result has been we're a little poor, a little less off. After I did all these things this morning, I went to my computer to sit down and write this speech. I pulled up the internet. The internet, despite being created by the Defense Department, the old DARPA net, actually is relatively free of government intrusion. That's changing. The internet's wonderful. There are all kinds of things. You can buy anything you want. You can find all kinds of information. I can order books that are long out of print from used bookstores in New Jersey. I bought a small knife from a man in Japan who made it by hand. Beautiful work of art. It cost me almost $30. To buy it without internet would have cost me several $100s. Games, education, television, movies, whatever you want, it's all on the internet. And for those of us who are old enough, this is new. None of this existed prior to about 1990. And it wasn't until the late 90s that it really took off. I had to work on the internet in 1993 for a government program I was involved with. The internet back in those days was not fun. It was slow, it was boring, there was nothing to do on it. Downloading a picture would take 20 minutes. It broke all the time. Now we can't live without it. We have smartphones. We have internet on our phones today. We have internet on our cars. It's used in the military. It is more important to our national defense than any ship, missile, or gun or soldier we have. Businesses could not survive without it. My law firm couldn't have survived without it. It makes life better for everyone. And it's done with no regulation. And yes, there are problems on the internet. There's too much pornography. There's a lot of junk on there. There's a lot of crackpot ideas on there. But that exists almost everywhere else in society in one form or another. The internet is better without government interference. But that's changing. December 21st, the FCC, which has no authority, under no statutory authority as provided by Congress to interfere with the internet, put out 4 net neutrality rules. These rules have a good cause. It ostensibly says that any internet service provider cannot prevent any other content provider from putting it through there. For example, I use Cox Communications for my internet. They give me my internet service. Cox has to allow me to use Google as my search engine. They can't stop it. Cox would much rather I buy my online movies and television shows through Cox On Demand, but I use Netflix instead. And Hulu and other shows. They can't block it. They can't say if you use Cox for internet, you have to only use Cox products. That's what net neutrality would do, is it would make that the law of the land. The other aspect to it is something called eliminating price discrimination. Price discrimination, for those of you who don't know, is very easy. If you've ever been to ladies' night at a bar, it's price discrimination. Ladies drink free, men pay a lot. The reason they do this is men like to go to bars where ladies are drinking. That's price discrimination. The point here is, yes, it kind of stinks if you're a guy and you have to pay for it. But here's the catch. Everyone benefits. The bar owner benefits because he gets a lot more money because more people come to bars when men and women think they can find people they'd like to meet, flirt with, and date. Men benefit because, yes, they have to pay for drinks, but guess what? There's women there, and that's part of the reason they're going to the bar. And women benefit because they get to go out and not have to pay for drinks. Everyone gets something, but it's a result of discrimination. On the internet, it would work like this. I use Cox. I get an email account, unlimited internet, and the Cox services that they provide. If I want to host a website on Cox, I have to upgrade to a business account. I have to pay, instead of, I can't remember what the amount is, instead of $20 a month, I have to pay $50 a month. That's discrimination. Net neutrality would say, no. All your services have to be provided to everyone equally. Same service, same rates, same whatnot. The problem is, what are the unintended consequences of this? And we know historically that these good intentions, in all cases, have bad results. It leads to poorer service, more regulation, less innovation, and generally worse than what you had before in most cases. I'll give you some example of good intentions that have gone wrong too. Gas crunch. Gas is at $4 a gallon. We've actually been here before in the 1970s when OPEC tried to gouge prices. President Nixon thought it would be a good idea to simply say, oil companies can't charge more. He fixed the price of gasoline. The result was not cheap gas for everyone. The result was a shortage. We ran out of gas. There were literally lines a mile long to get to the gas station. Gas was rationed. If you went to the gas station, you could get 5 or 10 gallons at a time. You couldn't fill up your tank. Fights would break out at gas stations. They actually had to hire security people to keep track of all the hundreds of cars lined up because people would get into fistfights. When the regulation of gas prices ended, the gas shortage went away in literally a matter of days in most places, and a matter of weeks in the entire nation. The gas shortage was caused not by OPEC, but by Richard Nixon. And we were just upset about the whole Watergate thing. If you look at other things, look at the phone system. AT&T was a natural monopoly regulated by the government. Phones were expensive. You didn't have answering machines. You didn't have call waiting. You didn't have cell phones. Phone calls, long-distance phone calls were exorbitant. My mother's family is from Missouri. We would only talk to them on the phone 2 or 3 times a year. That was deregulated in the 1980s. Now I've got an Apple iPhone that has video games on it. My mom talks to her sisters on a weekly basis. In fact, if anything, they talk too much and it takes up too much time. Phones are cheaper, both for yourselves and in terms of monthly costs, and they do so much more. You can call anyone on the planet with access to a phone for pennies a minute at most. Unlimited calling is commonplace. Phones do everything. You have call waiting, joint calling. I phoned into Karen's radio show by phone. The radio show's in New Jersey. That's where it's based out of. And I do it by phone.